Good morning. This is a quick introduction on how to get Twilight Imperium 4 playing on Tabletop Playground. The first step is, of course, to purchase the game off of the Steam store. And we should note here that it is in early access still. However, this more has to do with its integration with mod.io than it does with the completeness of the game. So, of course, to get Twilight Imperium, you'll have to go to tabletopPlayground.mod.io. You'll have to log in with a separate mod.io account to your Steam account, and then subscribe to the mod itself. Once you have Tabletop Playground loaded, something to always keep in mind is in the top left, there is a loading bar for any of your game updates. You always want to make sure that its downloads and installs are completed before you try to start or join any games. Starting a game is simple. Set your lobby name and a password if you need one, put whatever maximum players you would like to have, and load the game. From there, you'll select Twilight Imperium 4 from the list, and there are 3 tables available. The 8-player full-size table is the default option, but the other 2 are worth checking out. Tabletop Playground lets you select any environment, but we heavily recommend the Milky Way background. To hop in someone else's game, you just select Join Game, select their game from the list, and type in the password. You won't be able to select Join until you have the password correct typed into the server details. Okay, you've done it. You're in a game of Twilight Imperium 4 on Tabletop Playground. Let's get a lay of the land. In the top right is a UI display that we use to override the standard Tabletop Playground player list. This includes faction information and points. In the top left, there's all your standard tools for drawing or adding text or zones. And in the top center is where you would find the button to access your settings menu, which you can also access by hitting escape. The other important features are accessed by right-clicking the table. This is where you can add objects from the object library or save your game. The far right side houses our supercomputer Savant, as well as all of the important public components. To begin playing, you take a seat at any of the available options on the table, and you can note your player area houses a wonderful readout of all of your available units, as well as a box for your trade goods, and just above your player area are fighter tokens, infantry tokens, and the graveyards where you can throw a lot of components to send to their rightful places. The top of your player area also has the button to signify when you are away or when you have passed for the round, and you can also see who all is passed via the missing lines above your player area or the scratched their names in the upper right UI. At the start of the game, our supercomputer Savant will let you choose your player account, the number of points you want to play to, or any other important additions you want, including all 3 codices or the important base game Magian. From there, you'll see a handy menu system. By accessing the maps section, you can choose any of the many available pre-made maps, or you can import your string for any of the available map strings that are out there. This is also where you place cards or your frontier tokens. Additionally, in the map tool is where you can find your drafts, like all of your Space Cats, Peace Turtles tournament drafts, or Milty drafts, or what have you. Once you've chosen the draft you want to go to, what you will then do is turn your attention to all of the individual player areas to execute the drafts. All of these tools help run everything for you, so you just go through your standard turn order with everyone selecting their options, and when you're done with a draft, you click the Ready button at the bottom once all players have made their selections. Another useful tool in the map area are faction borders, which you can use to better showcase who controls what areas on the map. We can also use Savant to take us through all the phases of the game. During the strategy phase, please note the UI shows us who's taking what as they take it, so you can keep an eye on the top right corner rather than watching the entire map to see who grabs what strategy cards. And at the end, you click Place Trade Goods and Set Turns, and you're off to the races. The action phase menu houses an updated auto roller that we will cover later in this video. To set up your faction, over in your player area, you can select Setup Faction to receive a random faction, or you can take one of the many faction reference cards, place it in your play area, and it will set up that specific faction for you when you click the Setup Faction button. After the mod does all the amazing work of unpacking the faction for you, you can select the Ready button, and it's time to play. For most actions on the map, every tile has a little hamburger menu on the far right that lets you activate the system or do things like explore the planets in that system. You can always also manually activate the system, and both results in a wonderful highlight of what system has just been activated on that turn. Exploring from this menu will draw the relevant cards from the Explore decks, and if those cards contain attachments, they will automatically attach to the tile itself as well as the planet card itself. If you ever need to move these attached items, all you have to do is hit L to unlock anything that's locked on the ground, and then it will allow you to move it to somewhere else. Don't forget to hit L again to relock the attachment. This same tile menu is also where you can do frontier exploring. It will automatically add a card and take away the frontier token for you. The mod team have also added a UI element that is an end turn button at the top of the screen that you can press when you are done to let the next person know that it is their turn. Your player area also houses your organizational planet and tech boards, and when you need to get rid of cards that are purgeable, you can always right-click them and purge them rather than discarding them or throwing them in any graveyard. Similar to purging, certain cards are context-specific and can allow you to do the faction or relevant ability by right-clicking. Also worth noting here, the text in Tabletop Playground's chat box can be copied and pasted, which is extremely helpful. When it's time to start doing strategy actions, you can flip your strategy card over and select play, and this opens a menu in each player's player area that lets them select what primary or secondary they are doing. This reports it to chat, although you will have to manually add most of the items from your supply. There is an automator at the bottom that allows you to spend strategy tokens, and this is getting added to all the time, so we may see further development. One fun automation is in the tech strategy card, where you can select the tech and it automatically adds it to your card holder, which you can then place in your player area. Let's talk about mouse modes. The first being G for ground mode. This is where locked tiles go, and I do not recommend hanging out in grounded mode because that's what will allow you to move locked map tiles on the board. To add some flavor to your game, you can select I to open up the drawing tool. This lets you freeform draw, or if you want to select a shape, you can add the shapes option and add any number of edges. If you max it out, it essentially will make a little circle for you. Click and drag to draw your circle. Also, hey, if you want to get really fancy, there's a fun little glow button and you can make your text and all of your stuff glow, and it's really annoying. So let's just delete all of that real quick. Our third mouse mode we access by hitting K, and this is called label mode. And when you click on the table, you add a little label. And then if you click on that label, you can change the text. And this is how we add text to the game board. You can move it around in a bunch of different ways, change the colors, change the size. And while in label mode, you can right click it to delete if your home is no longer for sale. Be sure to hit K again to return to regular cursor mode. A common goof I've seen players do is accidentally hit Z on their keyboard to change the perspective of their camera. First person mode goofs up your WASD, so just hit Z to return to third person. In your settings, you can also add the options to set arrow keys for rotation up, down, left, and right. This is not on by default and is a setting people are generally used to. So once you set those hotkeys, you can have a lot more control over your camera movement. On to more modes. One I use a lot is to hit M to enter measure mode. This is how you draw a straight little line on the map, and you can use it to point at things like a laser pointer or something, but you have to toggle it off to get out of that measure mode. X activates measure movement, which is a line that spawns when you move components around. So if you accidentally hit X and start seeing this line, you can deactivate it by hitting X again. And if any of these modes are things you just don't think you're ever going to use, you can always just delete the binding, and then it's not a threat that you might accidentally type it on your keyboard and be switched into one of these annoying modes you don't actually see any use for. It's worth scrolling through this key bindings list too to see many of the other features we're not covering today in this video. If you play Twilight Imperium across split sessions, right-clicking and selecting Save State is where you can set a state name and save it, and then right-clicking and loading state is of course where you would recall all of those many split session games you have saved. This is also where you can reload the base level of your TI4 mod. Another handy resource I'd like to turn your attention to is in Daryl's written guide to starting Twilight Imperium 4 in TTPG. He has done a lot of testing to determine some recommended settings, whether it be for lower end computers or even the good juicy stuff for your high end desktops. So if you're experiencing slowness or you want to see how far you can push it, please check that out. For the streamers out there, you can save camera angles with Control and the number at the top of your keyboard, and to recall it, you select Alt and the same number. These are global camera angles though, so everyone is sharing the same set of 8, which is why Daryl has implemented a lot of numpad camera angles as well that you should investigate when you go and check out all of the list of things over in Savant. That list is available in the Help menu. You can also see the 1, 2, and 3 Spawn Trade Good, Spawn Fighter, and Spawn Infantry hotkeys. This also lists your F for Flip Card, your R for Shuffle Deck, R is actually a very useful hotkey because this is where we can swap our infantry and fighter tokens for plastic, or if we have 3 fighter or infantry tokens, we can use R when we select 3 at a time to turn it into a single ×3 token, and vice versa to turn it back into 3 separate tokens. When hovering over a deck and pressing a number above our keyboard, we draw that many cards into our hand, and we can drag most cards into graveyards for them to get shuffled back into their decks or added to their discard areas. Alt and Alt Shift is also how we can take a look at components on the board closer up. You can hold Alt to see the face up version of a card, and if you hold Alt and Shift, it will show you the face down version of that card and show all the players that you're peeking. By default, you can't peek at locked components, but this is a setting you can change in the game settings menu. You have to go down to the advanced options and select the option for object zoom to ground. I do not recommend this for streamers or commentators, though, because it adds a lot of visual clutter. To secretly whisper a player in chat, you do /W space and then a unique portion of their username space your message, and it will secretly send them that message and publicly tell everyone else that the two of you are whispering. The status phase is quick and easy. In Savant, you can deal action cards and command tokens to all players, and you can return your strategy cards and end the status phase here. Which brings us to my favorite new addition. The agenda phase has this amazing little helper tool. You drop an agenda phase in, say you want help, and then select the style of agenda, in this case an elect player. Savant will display all of the public information, but you can also turn your attention to your player area to begin tallying votes. Everyone's available votes is displayed on the top. You can select no whens, play when, no after, or afters for all of your relevant writers and abilities. And then when it's time to vote, you click the vote button, and then you can add or subtract a total amount of votes. Also on the right here is where you denote whether or not you have played a writer on a particular option. After you say how much you're voting, the tool will not flip over your planet cards for you. So you can do that. An easy way also to access your player area is to hit collapse to shrink the menu, which you can then re-expand. Also, you can get a closer look at the current agenda from your player area by selecting the agenda in the top left. When you're all done, lock in your vote and it will pass the turn to the next player in the turn order. You can always unlock this if you need to fix your vote total. Some last things worth checking out over in Savant is in the stats area, where you can take a look at recent whispers that were made, or also the simple statistics, so you can get a look at people's tokens, resources, influence, and whatnot. There's also an option to toggle this. This is per player, so everyone would have to individually choose this option to display all of the totals in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And finally, this stats area can display all of the available secret objectives. Now, this is just a big list at the beginning, but as people place secret objectives into their scoring area, it does a sort of pseudo scratch off for all of the secrets that have been scored. So if you really need to try and check what available secrets are out there, this is the list you can reference. Okay, I promised we'd come back to the auto roller. So in addition to your standard combat, which we'll cover, there's a lot of things that are just here to allow other players at the table to read up on what's been happening in a tactical action. So here's how a standard tactical action can go. You activate the system, you move in your relevant units that you want to bring. This, of course, is a horrible example because infantry is just flying from home with no ship bringing it. But listen, I'm just trying to show you examples here. You can then visually announce that you finalized movement, and this would allow people to know that it's time for them to fire their Space Cannon offense, which they can do by clicking that button. Space Combat is all your standard things, but we also have an option for people to publicly announce their retreat. Space Combat, you just click and it rolls for all of your ships in the active system. And all this information gets posted in chat. Once you want to go down to the ground combat, you come over to individualized planet sections for bombardment, Space Cannon defense, and ground combat. Additionally, on this tool, you can warp in and out units so that you can kind of isolate the visual information on the screen and send all of the relevant units onto this board rather than on their tile on the map. And finally, you can announce that you're doing a production step, which brings us to our production helper in our player area. Here you can place units to tally their cost and planets and trade goods to pay for the resources. Then in the menu, you can send all of those ships to their system and report the build to the other players. Additionally, you can toggle privacy if you're trying to prepare a build and don't want other players to see it. And with that, you have it. You have all of the basics of playing Twilight Imperium 4th edition on Tabletop Playground. This mod is only possible due to the hard work of all of the mod team that's been contributing to its development, as well as Plasticity Studios for all of their help in working with our mod team. So thank you to everyone, and we'll see you in the game.